I need to tell you something that has kept me awake for the last 72 hours, something that contradicts everything we thought we knew about our place in this cosmos. Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. Comment your city name below and tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in the night sky lately? Unexplained lights, patterns you can't explain? NASA is quietly compiling reports, and they want to know where these phenomena are being seen. Your observation may be more important than you realize. What I'm about to share with you may fundamentally change the way you see humanity's place in the universe. For decades, I have stood at the intersection of theoretical physics and cosmic speculation, always careful to distinguish between what we know and what we hope to discover. I have spoken about parallel universes, about the possibility of advanced civilizations, about the technological signatures that might betray the presence of intelligence among the stars. But I always spoke in the conditional tense, in possibilities, in probabilities, in the language of scientific caution. Not anymore. Something has happened that has shaken the foundations of everything we thought we understood about our cosmic isolation. The object we have been calling 3II Atlas, a designation that once seemed purely astronomical, purely descriptive, has revealed itself to be something far more profound, far more terrifying, and far more purposeful than any of us were prepared to accept. Let me take you back to when this object first entered our awareness. It was detected as an interstellar interloper, only the third such object we had ever identified coming from beyond our solar system. The first was Oumuamua in 2017, that strange cigar-shaped visitor that accelerated in ways we still cannot fully explain. The second was Borisov, a comet that behaved more predictably, more naturally, and then came 3I Atlas. At first, the scientific community treated it with the same measured curiosity we extend to all astronomical discoveries. We calculated its trajectory, analyzed its spectral signature, estimated its composition. It was moving fast, extraordinarily fast, at velocities that suggested a journey spanning millions of years from another star system. The initial consensus was that this was simply another piece of cosmic debris, perhaps ejected from a distant planetary system during some violent gravitational upheaval. But there were anomalies from the very beginning. The object's trajectory was too precise. Unlike Oumuamua, which tumbled chaotically through space, as you would expect from a natural object, 3I Atlas maintained an orientation that seemed almost deliberate. Its approach vector brought it through the plane of our solar system at an angle that maximized its exposure to the inner planets Earth, Mars, Venus, Mercury. If you were designing a trajectory to conduct a systematic survey of our solar system's habitable zone, this is exactly the path you would choose. I remember the meeting where this was first pointed out. It was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in a conference room with no windows where a dozen of us had gathered to review the latest data. Dr. Sarah Chen from the SETI Institute placed the trajectory simulation on the screen, and for a long moment, no one spoke. "That's a survey pattern," someone finally said. "That's impossible," someone else responded. But we were all thinking the same thing. We were all feeling that cold recognition in our chests, the feeling you get when reality suddenly rearranges itself around a new and uncomfortable truth. Then came the signal. It was detected by the Allen Telescope Array in Northern California, a facility specifically designed to search for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. At first, the technicians thought it was interference, some terrestrial radio source bleeding into their instruments. But the signal's origin was unmistakable. It was coming directly from the coordinates of 3I Atlas. The transmission was unlike anything SETI had ever encountered. It wasn't a simple repeating pattern, not the kind of mathematical sequence science fiction has trained us to expect. It was complex, layered, modulated across multiple frequencies simultaneously. When they fed it through spectral analysis software, the signal revealed a structure, a grammar if you will, that suggested intentional encoding. I was brought into the analysis team 3 days after the initial detection. I will never forget the moment I first heard the processed version of that signal converted into audio frequencies the human ear could perceive. It sounded like music, but not music composed for human appreciation. It had a mathematical precision that was beautiful and alien at the same time. Crystalline tones that shifted in patterns that seemed to follow physical laws we hadn't quite identified yet. "It's trying to communicate," I said, and everyone in that room knew I was right. But here's what terrified us. What still terrifies me when I think about it late at night, staring up at the stars that suddenly feel so much closer, so much more observant. The signal wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a hello from across the cosmic ocean. It was a query, a test, an assessment. The mathematicians on our team, brilliant minds from MIT, Cambridge, the Institute for Advanced Study, spent weeks decoding the fundamental structure of the transmission. What they discovered was both elegant and disturbing. The signal contained what can only be described as a series of problems, mathematical, physical, even philosophical problems, posed in a universal language of logic and fundamental constants. It was testing us. 3i Atlas was testing humanity's level of cognitive development. Think about what that means. An object from another star system traveling through the vast emptiness of interstellar space for perhaps millions of years arrives at our solar system and immediately begins administering an intelligence test to our entire species. What kind of civilization would design such a probe? What level of technological sophistication would be required to encode such complexity into an automated system that could function across such immense distances and timescales? And more importantly, why? We worked around the clock to formulate responses. This was unprecedented in human history. Every message we had ever sent into space before, the Arecibo message, the Voyager Golden Records, the various radio transmissions aimed at nearby star systems, these were essentially messages in bottles, prayers cast into an ocean we believed to be empty. We never truly expected a response. But now something was listening, something was evaluating, and the pressure to respond appropriately, to represent humanity well, to perhaps pass whatever test we were being subjected to, it was crushing. I advocated for a response based on fundamental physics. I argued that we should demonstrate our understanding of quantum mechanics, of general relativity, of the standard model of particle physics, show them that we understand the deep structure of reality, that we've grasped the mathematical language in which the universe is written. Others argued for mathematics, pure abstract mathematics, that would transcend any specific physical implementation. Prime numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, proofs of theorems that revealed our capacity for logical reasoning. Still others pushed for something more humanistic. Art, music, literature translated into mathematical forms. They wanted to show that intelligence for us wasn't just calculation, but creativity, emotion, meaning-making. In the end, we crafted a response that incorporated all of these elements. We transmitted it using the Deep Space Network, focusing every available dish toward the coordinates of 3i Atlas. The message took 18 hours to transmit in full, and then we waited. The response came faster than physics should have allowed. Given the distance to 3i Atlas and the speed of light, we expected a delay of at least several hours before any acknowledgement could reach us. But the response arrived just 43 minutes after we completed our transmission. 43 minutes. Either 3i Atlas had somehow anticipated our response before we sent it, or it was communicating through some mechanism that bypassed the light speed barrier. Both possibilities were revolutionary. Both possibilities were terrifying. The return signal was different, more complex, more layered, but also more specific. It contained what appeared to be schematics, blueprints for technologies we could barely comprehend, energy generation systems that harnessed quantum vacuum fluctuations, propulsion mechanisms that manipulated space-time geometry, information processing architectures that integrated quantum entanglement across macroscopic scales. But embedded within these technical schematics was something else, something that made us realize we might have made a terrible mistake in responding at all. It was a map, not a map of physical space, but a map of cognitive space, a representation of the levels of intelligence and consciousness that existed throughout the galaxy. And on that map, humanity occupied a very specific position. We were at a threshold, a boundary, a transition point between one category of intelligence and another. And the map showed something else, something that has haunted every conversation I've had with the core analysis team ever since. The vast majority of civilizations that cross this threshold, that reach this level of technological capability and cognitive sophistication, disappear from the map shortly after. There is a great filter, a cosmic sieve, that separates species capable of becoming spacefarers from those who actually succeed in joining whatever community exists out there among the stars. And we are at that filter right now. The signal from 3i Atlas was telling us this, warning us or perhaps evaluating whether we were ready to hear this truth. I found myself thinking about the Fermi paradox, the great silence that has puzzled scientists for decades. If intelligence is common in the universe, if technological civilizations should be abundant based on the sheer number of potentially habitable planets, then where is everyone? Why haven't we detected overwhelming evidence of advanced spacefaring species? Perhaps the answer had just transmitted itself to us through an automated probe from a civilization we cannot even begin to imagine. Perhaps the galaxy is full of civilizations like ours, species on the cusp of achieving true cosmic significance, but very few make it past this critical juncture, and perhaps 3i Atlas is part of the mechanism that ensures this filter operates as it does. Over the following weeks, the transmissions continued. Each exchange revealed more of the picture, more of the cosmic architecture in which we were embedded but had been blind to. 3i Atlas wasn't just a probe, it was a node in a vast network, a communication system spanning the galaxy, connecting intelligences and monitoring the emergence of new technological species. Earth, we learned, had been under observation for far longer than just this current visit. The signal contained historical data, evidence of previous visits, previous assessments. There were references to observations during our early nuclear age, during the first radio broadcasts, during the space race. Every major leap in human technological capability had been noted, recorded, analyzed by this network we never knew existed. We are not alone. We have never been alone. But we have been in quarantine, contained within our solar system until we could prove ourselves worthy of contact or until we destroyed ourselves in the attempt. And now, with the direct communication established through 3i Atlas, the quarantine was entering a new phase. We were being given a choice, though the nature of that choice was still being decoded from the increasingly complex transmissions. One faction within the analysis team believed the signal was an invitation, an opportunity to join the galactic community, to access the technologies and knowledge accumulated over billions of years by countless civilizations. They saw this as humanity's greatest moment, the fulfillment of every dream we'd had about our place in the cosmos. Another faction was less optimistic. They saw patterns in the data that suggested a darker interpretation. The civilizations that disappeared from that cognitive map, what if they hadn't failed some test? What if they had been deemed unsuitable and were actively removed? What if 3i Atlas was not a welcoming committee, but an automated enforcement system, ensuring that dangerous, immature species never achieved the capability to threaten the wider galactic order? I found myself unable to commit fully to either interpretation. Both seemed to be partially supported by the data. Both seemed terrifyingly plausible. But then something happened that made all of our theoretical debates suddenly irrelevant. 3 weeks after the initial contact, observatories around the world detected a change in 3i Atlas itself. The object was transforming. Its spectral signature altered dramatically, suggesting massive internal energy releases. Its trajectory, which had been gradually carrying it past Earth toward the outer solar system, began to shift. It was adjusting course, decelerating, maneuvering. 3i Atlas was not simply going to pass by and leave us with our questions and our fear. It was positioning itself, and the calculations suggested it was entering a stable orbit, not around the Sun, but around Earth. We had a visitor, and it was staying. The public was told nothing. How could we explain this? How could we prepare humanity for the revelation that we were being observed, evaluated, perhaps judged by an intelligence so far beyond our own that the gap might be unbridgeable? The world was already fractured, already struggling with conflicts and crises that seemed insurmountable. To add this cosmic weight to the collective consciousness, the decision makers believed it would cause global panic, the collapse of social order. But secrets of this magnitude cannot be kept forever. Reports began to leak. Amateur astronomers noticed the trajectory changes. Videos appeared online showing unusual lights in orbit that didn't correspond to any known satellite. The conspiracy theories, ironically, were closer to the truth than the official denials. And then 3i Atlas did something that forced the truth into the open. It transmitted a signal that wasn't directed at our radio telescopes or our scientific instruments. It transmitted directly to every connected device on the planet. Every smartphone, every computer, every screen capable of displaying information suddenly showed the same image. that map of cosmic intelligence with humanity's position highlighted and a simple question rendered in hundreds of languages simultaneously. Are you ready? The world stopped. For one perfect crystalline moment, every human being with access to technology saw the same thing, understood the same implication. We were not alone. We had never been alone, and now we had to answer. I sat in my study that night watching the chaos unfold on the news channels, reading the millions of responses flooding social media, listening to emergency government broadcasts, trying to maintain calm while simultaneously confirming that yes, this was real, yes, we were in contact with something from beyond Earth, yes, everything had just changed forever. And I thought about consciousness, about intelligence, about the strange, unlikely, miraculous fact that matter could organize itself into patterns that could reflect upon their own existence, that could ask questions about the nature of reality, that could reach out across the void and try to understand what other minds might be out there. We humans have always thought of intelligence as our defining feature, the trait that elevated us above the other species on this planet. But what if intelligence itself is something far stranger than we imagined? What if consciousness is not a rare accident, but a fundamental force in the universe as basic as gravity or electromagnetism? What if the cosmos itself is waking up, becoming aware of itself through countless forms of matter organized into countless forms of mind? And what if we are just one small, uncertain voice in a conversation that has been ongoing for billions of years, spanning galaxies, connecting forms of existence we cannot even imagine? The question 3I Atlas posed, are you ready? It doesn't have a simple answer. Ready for what? Ready to abandon our cosmic innocence? Ready to accept that we are children in a universe of ancients? Ready to be transformed by contact with minds that might be to us as we are to bacteria? Or ready to face the possibility that we might not pass whatever test is being administered, that we might be found wanting, dangerous, unsuitable for whatever comes next? The transmissions continue. Every day new data arrives from 3I Atlas, now holding position 20,000 km above the equator, visible from Earth as a new star that wasn't there before. Teams of scientists, linguists, philosophers, and artists work around the clock to decode the messages, to formulate appropriate responses, to try to understand what is being asked of us. And patterns are emerging, disturbing patterns. The more we decode, the more we realize that this contact is not about exchanging pleasantries or sharing scientific knowledge for its own sake. This is an evaluation, a judgment, and the criteria by which we are being measured are not entirely clear. Some of the transmissions seem to be asking about our treatment of our own planet, about the sustainability of our civilization, about whether we have overcome our self-destructive tendencies. Other transmissions probe our capacity for abstract thought, for moral reasoning, for the kind of cosmic empathy that might be required to join a community of diverse intelligences. But there are also transmissions that seem to be testing something darker, our capacity for aggression, our willingness to sacrifice individual freedom for collective survival, our potential to become a threat. I am haunted by one particular decoded message. It described a concept the translation team has rendered as civilization pruning. The idea that the galaxy has mechanisms, perhaps conscious mechanisms, perhaps automated systems like 3I Atlas, that ensure only certain types of civilizations are allowed to expand beyond their home systems, that there are rules we didn't know we were subject to, and that breaking these rules or failing to demonstrate the qualities required for advancement results in what the message euphemistically called containment protocols. What does that mean? What happens to a civilization that fails this test? The message was unclear, perhaps deliberately so, but the implication was stark. We are being given a chance, but it may also be our last chance. I think about the Cold War, about how close we came to nuclear annihilation, to destroying ourselves before we even knew we were being watched. I think about climate change, about the slow-motion catastrophe we are inflicting on our own biosphere. I think about artificial intelligence, about the approaching moment when we might create minds that exceed our own, and the questions that raises about consciousness and purpose and control. Are these the tests? Are we being evaluated on our ability to navigate these existential risks? And if we fail, if we destroy ourselves or transform ourselves into something the galactic community cannot tolerate, Will Three-Eye Atlas simply observe and record our demise, or will it take more active measures? These are the questions that keep me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of cosmic significance pressing down on our fragile, confused, beautiful species. But there is another possibility, one that I find myself hoping for despite the evidence, despite my training to remain skeptical and objective. What if this contact, as terrifying as it is, represents our greatest opportunity? What if Three-Eye Atlas is not here to judge us, but to guide us? What if there are beings out there, ancient, wise, compassionate beings who remember what it was like to be young and afraid and uncertain, who want to help us navigate this critical transition? The universe is so vast, so old, so full of possibilities we haven't begun to imagine. Perhaps we are not being tested by some cold automated system, but welcomed by a community that understands the difficulty of achieving cosmic maturity, that wants to support emerging civilizations rather than suppress them. I don't know which interpretation is correct. None of us do. The data supports multiple narratives, and perhaps that ambiguity is itself part of the test, to see how we respond to uncertainty, to cosmic anxiety, to the knowledge that we are not the center of creation, but merely one voice among many. What I do know is this: humanity has crossed a threshold. We cannot uncross it. We cannot return to the comfortable isolation we once enjoyed, to the assumption that we were alone or that any other intelligences were so distant as to be irrelevant. Three-Eye Atlas has initiated direct contact, and now we must respond not just as individual nations or cultures, but as a species, as a planetary civilization, as one voice speaking for Earth. And the question it has posed, are you ready? That question is now being asked not just by the probe in orbit above us, but by history itself, by the future that is rushing toward us faster than we can prepare for it. Are we ready to grow up, to take responsibility not just for our own survival, but for our place in the cosmic community, to become worthy of the intelligence we claim to possess? I want you to think about that. I want you to comment below, not just your city name, but your answer to that question. Are we ready? What do you think happens next? What would you say to an intelligence from beyond the stars if you had the chance? Follow this channel as we continue decoding the universe's final warnings, as we track the ongoing transmissions from Three-Eye Atlas, as we watch humanity's response to the greatest moment in our history unfold in real time, because this is not ending. This is just beginning. And the answer we give collectively as a species through our actions and our choices in the days and years ahead, that answer will determine whether humanity joins the cosmos as a mature civilization, or whether we become just another failed experiment. Another cautionary tale told by ancient intelligences to their young about the dangers of evolving consciousness too quickly, too recklessly, without the wisdom to match the power. Look up at the night sky tonight, that new star that wasn't there before. That's Three-Eye Atlas watching, waiting, evaluating, and somewhere in the transmission we're still decoding, somewhere in the layers of meaning we're still trying to understand. There might be an answer to the question that has haunted me since this all began. What happens to the civilizations that fail the test?